I'm Alejandra, and I don't want to dishonor my parents, and I don't want them to feel any sort of guilt. So growing up, we were entrepreneurs. They, had businesses. They were very busy. They left us in good hands. We always had someone that took care of us and stuff. But we were kind of like feral kids. I don't know if that's like every kid raised in the 80s and 90s. I mean, we were, on our bikes, gone all day and just having fun. But in that, there was a lot of time that we were, unprotected or without a parent to really talk to. So I learned to keep a lot of things to myself, and I learned to just, I don't know how it came to be, but I just was a person who internalized everything. So I would write a lot and I would process on paper, but there were some things that I wouldn't even write. So I think I learned at a young age to keep secrets and to keep a lot hidden. And in that, I was exposed to certain things growing up that from the older I get and the more that I talk to people, I realize that it's not that uncommon. But I was exposed to things, and those things were kept hidden. So you learn to live this kind of split reality of, your outward life, and then there's the things that you just don't talk about. I grew up going to Christian school. I went to a Baptist school until I went to, I think, high school. I was at a Catholic school. So I was always exposed to God. Always, I was, memorized Bible verses, went to Awanas on Wednesdays. And so very much immersed outwardly in that world, but our home was not, my mom prayed, but it wasn't something that was it wasn't like a super heavy culture of that day to day. I was probably around 17 years old, and everything in my life was falling apart. My parents were fighting a lot. We were going through pretty much on the brink of divorce, and then they did end up divorcing. And so at this point, my mom, myself, my two of my siblings were all living in one bedroom in in one of my mom's friends' condos. And my dad had pretty much disowned me specifically because things had happened. Before that, I had, been, pretty pure, pretty innocent, didn't have boyfriends, didn't nothing. But then it was after that happened, my whole life kind of spiraled out of control. And it was after the first time of being intimate with someone, it just kind of opened the floodgates. And then I don't know, I was just kind of spiraling. So that's how it happened. Just like everything else, I didn't tell anybody. And I just went to Planned Parenthood. And I don't think I ever grieved. I don't think it was close the door, shut the door, throw away the key. I feel like I don't really have a ton of memories. I have so I went in for a consultation, and I was expecting there to be okay, so here are your choices. This, or this. I don't know that I had planned or thought so far ahead to think oh, I'm going to have a baby or anything like that. To me, it was oh no. And I found out right away. So I didn't have, so it was immediate. So I made a decision very, very quickly. We had the consultation, and then they basically told me, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is when you need to be here. And so it was very straightforward. It was, and I don't think at that time, they never said anything about a pill. I hear people talking about a pill. It was just, you're going to make the appointment, and this is what we're going to do. They made it sound like it wasn't a child. It was a clump of cells, and that, it's not even formed. It's just, this is what it looks like, and it looked like a little goo. I started going to Christian school since I was in 3rd grade, and I'd been going to Christian camps, I think probably even before. So I was saved at some point in there. I don't have a specific age or day, but when everything fell apart and around 17 years old, with my parents' marriage, and and just that time of like being unprotected and without like parental input, I pretty much was prodigal, I would say, until at least the age of 26. All throughout, this time from then, it's been a closed door. It was only really until like 2020 when God started to draw me into like this process of inner healing, and where he's just been teaching me to trust him. And there around, I want to say it was maybe like April of 2020, I prayed and I told him, like, I said, okay, Lord, like whatever you want to use of my life, I give you permission to use it for your glory. And it was when after I prayed that, I had a dream, and which kind of like opened the door. And that's when God started to put his finger on all these traumas and all these things that I had been through that he wanted to heal. Through this journey, the funny thing is about a week before coming here, I had an inner healing and deliverance session. And that was the first time that I'd actually like exposed or written out anything about the abortions. But we weren't able to do the last session. It's actually scheduled for March 3rd. So this is the first time that I'm actually talking about it with anyone. But I just know that God has redeemed all of the other traumas. He's redeemed everything that I've been through. He is redeemed and is redeeming. So I don't know if this is directly related, but I was not able to have my children naturally. So when I did have my two boys, the first one was an emergency C-section after about, I don't know, like 18 hours of really hard labor. I would not progress. So he was taken through an emergency C-section. And then the second child, he was a scheduled C-section because they couldn't put my body through that again. It was really traumatic. The first one was. I would say, I mean, there were multiple things that affected my sense of self-worth. I'm sure leading up to my decision to get the abortion, and also the effects of the abortion and just how I saw myself. I think that having had the series of traumas, and especially that one that was so secret, that was like the shut door, how I saw myself was worthless, which affected me relationally, because the relationships that I ended up in were always not good. In fact, my first marriage was an abusive, really traumatic marriage. And had I not had that experience, perhaps my self-concept would have been different, and I would have valued myself. I was reading in the pamphlet, the Arise pamphlet from, or the magazine, I should say, last night, and how abortion affects women in their mental health, with the statistics on anxiety and depression. And I saw that and I was like, yeah, like that's true for me. In fact, almost all of them, with the exception of I've never experienced breast cancer, thank God. But it was pretty much the truth for me. I've experienced a lot of anxiety and depression cyclically. It's funny because like when you pray, it's like you want to come to God with all that you are, and you want to be able to stand before him naked. And there's certain things that you don't realize how they hinder your ability to even just come clean to him, when he knows you, he sees you. But like, so even though his word says that, you're beautifully and wonderfully made, and he speaks all of these beautiful things about you, and his blood covers you, and you're redeemed, and all these things, it's hard to believe, because you, and you know the things that you've done. And I say that, obviously, I know me, I know the things that I've done. So it's really hard. I think it's hindered my ability to believe the truth about who God says that I am.
God.
And that hiddenness and those things that are, in the dark give the enemy more territory to torment you. And it's almost like this partnership with all of the horrible things that he says, like, you're worthless. Nobody will love you if they knew who you really are. And in the part of the healing where you shine the light on everything hidden and you let God just clean it up, and where you can receive his forgiveness. That's, I think, where I am. I've been walking through the process of inner healing and deliverance for about 3 years. And every time I think I'm like, okay, Lord, like, I'm good, I feel like I'm in a good place, then God's like, okay, one more layer of the onion. So this is the layer of the onion that I am in right now. And I feel like it's time. And I was just like in a time of like just deep repentance and just, talking to God about this, but not to anybody else. Well, that day that it had been overturned, my husband had gone to a Walgreens, and there was a gentleman. It was at the end of the night. He had a thing of roses, and he was selling his single roses, and he only had 2 left. And so my husband bought the 2 that he had. And when he brought them home, I was like, Lord, I knew it was him. I knew it was God. And he was like, you're redeemed. I've forgiven you. And so I still have them. I would tell her to tell somebody, to talk to somebody, a parent, or I don't know. I feel like if it were like, if I had it to do over again, I would have talked to somebody. I would have shared it with somebody. I think that the power of shame is that it keeps you silent, and that is its own prison. So to be able to speak and just to, it opens the door to possibilities. But if you're silent and you're just like, the enemy is just so unrelenting when you're isolated and alone, and then all that you feel is fear. That's just fear, and then every horrible possibility, everyone's gonna hate you, and it's terrible. But if you had someone that you could trust, or an adult, or somebody that you could just talk to, just to even like, okay, this is where I'm at, what are my options? And there will, you know what I mean? Like, but I guess the other thing is, like, what if a person doesn't have someone that they can talk to? There are resources, there are people who will love you and who will help you. You're not alone. I would say you would never, like Krista said last night, you never regret choosing life. I think that's one of the hardest realities to live in, is to live in regret. Right? It's like, it's an anchor, and not a good anchor. Like Jesus is the anchor for your soul. This is like an anchor that anchors you to sadness. But if you, like me, did not make a good choice, there is still redemption. I think forgiving yourself, it's funny because like this deliverance minister that I've been working with, she's like, you realize that holding judgment against yourself is like putting yourself in the seat of Jesus. Like, that's his seat, not yours. And And I was like, oh, God, yeah. So let me remove myself off of that seat and receive his forgiveness.